So today we're going to discuss starting a new TILOS project. So that involves first of all creating a new project based on the template. So if we go to TILOS and we create a new file and we base it on a task template that exists, this should be the only one, might be a different version number in your folder at this point. So it takes a copy of that template, presents it on screen, and it wants some more information from us. So what are we going to call this project? So this is going to be this possession, this is going to be west sidings. Where's it going to start, the footprint, and where is it going to end? So mine's just slightly longer than my default here. I'm going to carry this out next Friday from 10 o'clock till 7 o'clock the next day. So we set those basic premises up. So this footprint here isn't your work area, it's about a mile each side really, so that you've got room to see the whole diagram. And then it asks us to save that project. It's just a file, you've put it anywhere you want, click on save, and you've got the familiar interface of TILOS where down the bottom we've got the cells, on the right hand side we've got the time distance diagram, and you've got the Explorer on the right hand side. So now we're going to edit the descriptive spreadsheet at the top of the view. So we go back to TILOS and you scroll to the top of the view, you've got this spreadsheet. If you select that item and you go to the tabs below, you can click on the open button, or you can double click on the table below, and that opens that information in Excel. So you can then fill that information in, and just to save time I've got a copy of that I'm copy and pasting. And I probably want to say we're going to do that on the 11th, and the it's been approved by, so we've filled in that basic information, only got to do that once, and then we close Excel, saving as we go, and that information is retained at the top of the screen. So so that's our first step. Our next step then is to enter the work area and the isolation extents in the distance profile. So if we go back to TILOS, in the Explorer on the left hand side there's a section called distance axis definitions. If you expand that, there's a section called distance profiles. If you extend that, there are two profiles, and what they're going to do is they're going to draw some vertical drop lines on screen in the right place, which we can also use for other things. So first of all, if we double click on the work area extents, and we're saying that our work area starts at 82 miles and it ends at 83 miles 34, and we say OK. So on screen there we've got those green drop lines at the extent of the work area, and also I'd like to put in the extent of the isolation area, so we can check that nothing's sitting outside that footprint. So just at the very beginning and end we get those red lines. You might have to increase the view range to see everything. So that's the next thing to do. And then we're going to edit the cell range for views. So if I go back to TILOS, as I said, if we click here on the time distance diagram, this is the footprint that we're seeing on screen, and this is the time range. But we probably want to go back a little bit on time, and we're going to start the display at 9 o'clock to get some additional activities, and we're going to end the display at 8 o'clock, so we just again get a bit of sort of space. And we could put some margin around the outside of our plan here if we want to. So we're going to do this to this view, but also if we look to the top of the screen we've got another view that's called map resources 1 mile before and after, and if I double click on that view it's the same information as before, and it's remembered all of those drop lines, but we've got a section on the left hand side here that is what's happening on the left hand side of this. So these are all set to the same distance at the moment, so we need to say, well, this one starts at 82,800, so this one needs to end at 82 miles, and we're going to start at 81 miles. So it's just 1 mile before, and then similar on the right hand side. If we click here, it's going to start at this point and it's going to end at that point. So that's just going to give us some useful view of perhaps where the trains go. So we could focus our view here in the middle a little bit more tightly and lose our extents lines, our isolation lines, and we could bring those into this view if we increase that. Sorry, I did the wrong one there. So let's go back to our basic one here. So we've set the extents of the isolation and the work area. So the next thing to do is to use a task group to create the work items themselves. So if we go back to TILOS, we see that in our task library on the left hand side, not only we've got our task templates, but we've got some task groups, and these have been lovingly created before. So we're going to click on this button to insert a task group. We're going to choose the MOBSI one, and we're going to go onto the diagram, and we're going to start this, and we'll draw a box at this area here. So we're going to set the footprint of the work, and we're going to choose, make sure it's MOBSI from this list. We're going to choose by coordinates from this list. This should have snapped to the beginning of the work and end of the work area that we said, and this is the time that we're going to start the work. So we click on OK, and all of those items are created in one operation. So we've got the whole plan. It just needs some adjustment before we do anything with it. So the next thing to do is to change the train resource amounts if required. So the default, if I look at the resource setup on this train, it's got 16 MFS empty and 16 full. In this particular case, we might be only using 14, so we would change that, and it would change the footprint of the setup activity, and it would get a bit less. And this activity has got a logic link to the next activity, and it's got this update train setup on reschedule. So when I reschedule, this activity and subsequent ones will also reduce in size. So we'll see that in a minute. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to edit the contingency end date and time and the original duration setting. So we go back to TILOS. We've now introduced a contingency item in between the S&T testing and the return to work site. So we're going to, what we need to do is select the contingency item, go to the links and constraints tab, and what sets the end of the contingency item is this date and time, and it defaults to a date. We need to change that so that it's the same date and time as the activities it's based on. So that's on the and we want this to end at 6:40 in the morning, the time that the return work start must start, and we're going to set the original buffer here to 0. So that's what we have just done. We're then going to use F9 or reschedule to update the links to pass on that train configuration and to calculate the size of our contingency. So if we go back to the top of the screen so you can see it happen, this is the footprint of our train setup. It's going to pass that footprint onto this activity. If we click on reschedule, then it's warning us that we might have a problem at the end, and if we go down to have a look at that, then we've got a 43-minute contingency, which is pretty good news, and all of these activities have been positioned in their correct location. So we've achieved a major amount of work in less than 10 minutes. We're then going to update the resource histogram on the right hand side for the resources used. So if we scroll across to the right and scroll down a little bit and make some room so you can see what's going to happen, if we right mouse click on this area, we can say generate resource bars. We need to choose the work line, and these should already be in place. We click on OK, and then it's showing us how many and when we need these various bits of equipment and people. So that's how we can very quickly calculate that. If you do that at the end, you see that immediately. So that's our second to last step. We're going to save that information in TILOS. You should perhaps save as you go along, but we're going to save that, and then we're going to print it, and we're finished. So we talked about printing on the training course. We're going to click on the print settings button. We're going to choose our printer. If you haven't got one selected, just click on select printer and choose one. Change its properties. Here I'm going to change its page size if necessary, and I'm going to choose whether to print to one page or across multiple pages, and click on OK. So if that's already set up, I just got to click on the print button, and then it's going to invoke the printer driver, and it's going to save this to, because I'm using a PDF writer, I'm going to save this to my temp folder, and then it's going to open that in Acrobat Reader, and there I've got my whole plan, and I can send that off, and we're done. So that's how to create a project in TILOS in less than 10 minutes. So thank you for your time.